that says SAA business rescue practitioners have given the entire workforce notice to terminate their employment by the end of April. We're now joined by the chief economist at the Center for Risk Analysis, Ian Cruikshank. Mr. Cruikshank, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Is this an indication that SAA has been clipped its wings for good?
I think SAA's wings are going to be permanently clipped. I think they're not going to be able to use them again. And, if we just have to look, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise. After all, we know that losses accumulated in the last few years are of something like 26 billion rand. I mean, that's a huge amount. And now they have the nerve to say to government, let us have another 10 billion rand and we'll keep operating for a while. Why? So they can accumulate even more losses. I think it's time to say that they've got to cut off these loss-making arms of state-owned enterprises and say they can either manage on their own or they can't. We obviously cannot operate efficiently our own local airline.
Now, taking into cognizance that SAA was already on a slippery slope and at a point of no return, do you think that the 10 billion would have helped in any way?
Sure, it would help for another few months. But really, we've got to face facts. We've got to say, listen, we've poured tens of billions into SA already. For what? For a loss-making enterprise that is not very competitive in an industry which is oversupplied with aircraft, undersupplied with travelers, and right now I think that it's just succumbing to the inevitable and saying, let us sell what we can for what we can. There's a big problem there, of course, because many of the assets, that is the aircraft of their assets, are leased. Not all, but mostly, certainly many of the new ones are leased. Those are the ones which would have some recognizable market value. But with the state of the industry, with the state of tourism, with travel being severely curtailed at the moment, I think it's better to say, your first loss is your best loss. It's never a good loss, but rather than accumulate further losses, which we, the taxpayers and citizens of South Africa, have to bear. I think it's the right thing. Very sad, but it's the right thing to do. What is the alternative? To find another airline which would be able to take over the operating of the company itself. To find somebody who's going to take it over in total and the losses as well, accumulated losses, is going to be very difficult. I'm afraid there's going to be very little alternative to closure, and better now than closing at an even better cost at a later time.
Now, as you mentioned that the 10 billion rand would have possibly helped, but for only a few months. And we've seen the business rescue practitioner team approaching the government for further funding, and the government slamming the door right in their faces. Did the government make the best decision in this regard?
I'm sorry, I just missed the last part of your question.
Did the government make the best decision in refusing the business rescue practitioners the further funding, the further injection of 10 billion rand?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm afraid we've lost contact on the sound side.
Hi, Mr. Cruikshank, can you hear me now?
I can just sum it up. What I would say is, they're unlikely to find an alternative to closure. They've got to face the fact that the auditors have to sign off that it's a going concern, that in fact it is possible for it to remain on a profitable basis, or to find a basis for accessing further capital. That seems very unlikely, and I think it's very hard for the employees, but better to say, go and look for a job now while there may be somewhere in the industry, that rather than face the fact that there may be none at all in the next few months ahead. So, a sad situation, but I think inevitably what's come around should have been expected.
Well, since SAA, Mr. Cruikshank, is permanently grounded, as it were, and the fact that the business rescue practitioners has advised its entire workforce, to accept or confirm in writing by the end of this month that whether they accept the termination of their employment or not, I mean, the SAA wings has already been clipped. So do they have a choice? What other options are at the employees' disposal?
Sintiwi, sorry to break in here. I've lost sound on your side. I can't hear what you're saying at the moment.
All right. All right, Ian, thank you so much for your time.
I'd like to say something to you. I can't add anything more to say. Better, I know it's really tough for the employees, but rather terminate it now and get the misery over and done with while there's still some small activity in the economy, rather than make it even worse at a later stage. Well, one's got to just think positively for SAA and for the country as a whole. But government has got to stop accumulating losses in the state-owned enterprises, which come eventually at the cost of the citizens and of the taxpayers. It's time to draw a line and say SAA is not a going concern. I would say that the auditors would have a great deal of trouble signing off their annual accounts and saying, yes, it's a justifiably going concern. They can access capital, and I don't believe that they can. That's about it at the moment.
All right. Ian Cruikshank, the Chief Economist at the Center for Risk Analysis, joining us on the line. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. On to other news now. Residents in the sprawling township